So, I'm on a trip backpacking around Europe with my brother, currently in Paris. We're staying at this hostel and we're in a 10-bunk bedroom. There was this one guy in the room who was immediately super weird. Almost right away, like as soon as we got settled, he starts talking to us about flying to Libya. He's all like, "Us, Libya, fly tomorrow." And me and my brother are just like, "Nah, dude." He keeps saying it. We keep saying no. And he's getting progressively more assertive about it. As me and my brother are going around doing sightseeing and stuff, I keep seeing this dude around. When we're at the hostel, he kept following us out to the dining hall, out onto the terrace, and I'm getting more creeped out. My brother, ever the non-assertive soul he is, just laughs it off like the dude is joking. This goes on for 2 days. Well, this morning, we were going out to breakfast, and I forgot my phone back in the room. So I told my brother to just go ahead, and I ran back to get it. I go in the room, and the dude is sitting there. There's no one else in the room, and I honestly contemplated just leaving it. But I didn't trust it alone in the room, so I planned to just grab it quickly. Earlier that morning, he was still on about Libya and was essentially bending over our beds going on about it, despite me repeatedly telling him to stop talking to us. I go in to grab my phone when suddenly he just yells, "Libya! Now! 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 We go now!" I'm very scared, since at this point we are the only ones in the room, and I just say, "Screw off, dude." And I go to leave when he blocks the door and grabs my shoulder, still going on about going to the airport and flying to Libya. I shove past him and run away to where my brother and I were going to breakfast. I decided that we were going to switch rooms because this dude was officially creep level 100. We make it back to the hostel, and before we talked to the front desk, we went outside for a smoke. And guess who shows up? I almost yell at him to leave us alone, and he flat out says no. I go to the front desk and explain that this dude has been harassing us and we wanted to change rooms. I mention what went down in the room, and before I knew it, the cops were called and I was giving a statement. As they were sorting it out, there were a couple things that jumped out at me. First thing is that this guy didn't pay in advance. Normally, when you're staying at a hostel, you pay the full amount up front, or if you're staying for a while, you pay weekly. He was paying by the day. The second thing is that he had several pieces of ID in his wallet, none of which matched his description. Apparently, Paris has been having a problem with human trafficking. This guy was escorted out of the hostel by police. He was banned from staying there ever again. Me and my brother switched rooms, and we were given vouchers for free dinners for the rest of our stay there. And now, I'm terrified to go out by myself. I swear, if me and that guy had been alone in a more secluded place that didn't have cameras everywhere, I could have been shipped off to Libya. I was around 15 or 16 at the time, and my mom, dad, and I were on a family trip to New York City. It was a really good trip at first. We visited the Statue of Liberty, Madison Square Garden, Times Square, etc. And for the most part, it was a normal vacation. But towards the end of our trip is when things started to go crazy. It was our last day there, and we were trying to get back to the airport, so we decided to take an Uber. A couple minutes pass, and a gray Civic pulls up to the sidewalk we were on. I remember noticing that he had Lyft and Uber stickers on his car in multiple places, almost excessively. It kind of felt like he was trying to prove that he was our Uber. It was just a small thing, but looking back, I really wish I took more concern about how suspicious this guy was. Moving on. We were running late, so I'm guessing my dad didn't really pay attention to the car because this guy was definitely not an Uber driver. He was a lanky man, wearing clothes akin to rags, and he looked like he was drugged out at the time. But again, we were running late, and my parents obviously didn't really care about the way this man looked. The ride was normal until we got to the airport. We all expected him to get off the highway and let us off, but he didn't. Instead, he casually continued down the highway, past where we wanted to be dropped off. This is when my dad noticed that the man didn't have a meter or his phone setting up with the Uber GPS open. We were starting to get worried, and my dad asked him in a stern voice, "Excuse me, where's your meter?" The man stayed silent. Flustered, he asked once more, this time yelling, "Where is your meter?" Again, no reply. But at this point, the man started dashing down the highway, weaving past other cars and just driving very dangerously. We were all panicking. My dad was screaming at him to let us off. My mother was crying and praying with her rosary clutched firmly in her fist, and I was in shock. I froze up. I couldn't even cry or scream as much as I so desperately wanted to. I was completely immobilized. This continued for a while, driving down an unfamiliar road to God knows where, with a car that can only get faster and faster. I started having those classic end-of-road type thoughts like, oh my God, this might be it. There's nothing I can do about it. But luckily, we were saved. I don't know if we passed by it or if someone in a car was passed had called the cops, but we soon heard sirens blaring behind us, and we were being tailed at high speed by multiple police cars. One of the cops had a megaphone or something to amplify their voice and screamed out for the man to pull over. Obviously, he put up a fight, and the police had to actually cut him off to finally stop him. The police helped us out of the car and got all of our things from the trunk, while putting blankets around us and telling us that it was going to be okay and that we were now safe. At this moment, I felt like the biggest wave of relief wash over me that I have ever felt in my life. Don't get me wrong, it still messed me and my family up pretty hard, and I was still left pretty traumatized, but I was at least glad that me and my family were alive and safe. The police gave us a ride back to the airport, and everything went as planned from that point on. But oh my God, am I glad that I never had to find out where this guy was taking us and what he was planning to do with us. Just thinking about it still gives me goosebumps. I guess the moral of the story is to always check the license plate and make sure the car matches the right description that you listed on Uber/Lyft. That feature on the app that tells you what it is exists for good reasons. A few years ago, my boyfriend's dad's family decided to get together and all chip in to rent a condo in Ontario, Canada, and have a big get-together family vacation. There was a big, extended family over there that his dad never saw because he only really got along with one of his three sisters. His wife, however, had talked him into going, though, and they let me tag along because I'd been around long enough, and they liked and trusted me. I can't remember where everyone else had gone at this point in time. I think it was to the beach, for what was probably like the third time that day. It was just me and my boyfriend at the condo, because we were kind of sick of the beach and just wanted to do nothing in the shade for a while. We were sitting outside looking over the water and just kind of talking about life. I had just finished reading the Harry Potter series, so we were just kind of talking about that for a bit, when all of a sudden this woman comes out of the brush beside the condo. Just for an idea, this condo was about an acre of land, maybe, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. The front of the condo was probably 70 feet from a dirt road no one traveled down, really. And there were some dense trees and brush and whatnot that surrounded three sides of it. This woman comes out of the wooded area, and I immediately knew something wasn't right. She was limping, and frankly, she looked like crap. She was pale, and her face was gaunt. She was really, really pretty, but she just looked exhausted. The thing that immediately caught my attention was her baby, who she was holding pretty tightly in her arms as she started to come towards us. I didn't really know what to do, but my boyfriend immediately got up and walked over to make sure she was okay. I couldn't help but think all of these awful things might happen, After spending so many hours hearing these horror stories on YouTube or reading them on Reddit, I was just terrified that she might try to do something. My boyfriend is a lot more trusting than I am, though, and he's always had the first instinct of what's the problem and how can I help. He's never assumed the bad in anybody. So this woman is just sobbing by the time she gets to the porch of the condo, and she looks like she's just been through a war zone. She's shaking, hyperventilating, and crying. And she's telling us that basically her boyfriend has been drunk for a while and he's been getting worse and worse. And he's been an overall abusive guy. He gets mad whenever she was focusing on the baby instead of him. And part of what made him mad is that it wasn't his kid, so he kind of didn't care about the baby at all. She was telling us about how they were just on their way home when he, while driving under the influence, started reaching into the back seat where she was sitting with the baby and began to hit her and make threats towards the baby. It was at this moment she held onto the baby and jumped right out of the moving vehicle. She then began to wander through the woods when she spotted our condo. The moment she finished telling us this story, we see an angry dude walking up to the condo, and the woman began losing it. Drunk and angry, this guy followed her to our condo and was starting to come up to us. He was trying to act like he wasn't mad. He was saying, "Oh, you guys found her. Thank you so much. Baby, let's go home." Kind of thing, but he was just slurring his speech and not doing a good job of hiding how mad he was. My boyfriend has always been a pacifist. Honestly, he's even kind of a pushover. He's really non-confrontational and tries to find a way to talk stuff out and come to an agreement before doing anything else. But before I could even say anything, he's across the yard and approaching this guy. As much of a pacifist as he is, he's also huge. He's built like a football player. He's 6'3", and at the time he was 230 pounds. I've known my boyfriend since we were both 10. At the time, we were 20, and we've been dating for just over a year. I knew him better than anyone. He's never done anything like this before, but he goes up to this guy and goes, "Not another step, dude." And he's shaking as he says it. The guy tries to walk around my boyfriend and goes, "No, it's okay, I'm just going to take her home." And my boyfriend steps in front of him and shakes his head. "You're drunk," he said. "So I'm going to pretend like maybe you didn't get what I just said. Don't come any closer." It's at this point the guy stops trying to pretend, and he says something like, "You don't know what's going on. That's my girlfriend, and I'm going to take her home." And he tries rounding my boyfriend again. And one more time, my boyfriend blocks him and goes, "Stop." I've never heard this tone in his voice before or since. It was scary. It wasn't him. The guy tried one more time before my boyfriend finally put his hand on his chest and pushed him back a bit, keeping his hand on the guy's chest. "I'm telling you right now, you're not going anywhere near that girl and her child. So turn around and walk away." This guy was about 5'6", maybe 5'7". So when he looked up to threaten my boyfriend, he had looked like a kid. The guy finally looks up at my boyfriend, and he says something that I couldn't hear. My boyfriend said something back, and then the guy stared at him for a moment, like he was deciding whether or not to do anything. My boyfriend finally pushed him away, and the guy stumbled back, and then started pointing at me and the girl as he was saying something. And then he started to walk away. I didn't learn till the next day about the guy had told my boyfriend that he had a gun, and that he was coming back, and that he'd kill him if we tried to stop him again. My boyfriend's response to this changes depending on who's telling the story. Originally, he told me he'd told the guy that he'd feed him his own teeth, which made me laugh because he's such a dork and he got that from a movie. And ever since then, the line he tells everyone else is, "I'll be waiting." The woman was sobbing, the baby was sobbing, and I was shaking because even though he didn't throw any punches or anything, I could tell that he was ready to hurt this guy if anything else had happened. We called the police and didn't really do much of anything outside of make sure everyone was breathing and take the girl to her sister's place. We didn't really hear much from her after that. but I know my boyfriend sent her an email once or twice, and she's married now to someone else and had another kid last time they talked. It was a really nice trip overall, despite that part, and a fight that my boyfriend's dad had gotten into with some of his family. But overall, still a somewhat traumatizing experience.